Welcome back, my friends, to AA Recovery Interviews. I'm your host, Howard L., and I'm an alcoholic. Sober since January 1st, 1988, one day at a time. I'm grateful you've joined us. AA Recovery Interviews is the podcast where Alcoholics Anonymous members from around the world share their timeless and extraordinary stories of experience, strength, and hope. There are more than 170 hour-long interviews in this podcast series, each one a testimony of the recovery that's available to all who want it in Alcoholics Anonymous. My guest on today's podcast is Joe S., whose abuse of alcohol was a big part of his teenage and young adult years growing up in Liverpool, England. By the time he moved to Australia in his early 20s, he was a full-blown alcoholic. Joe was raised in a tumultuous home where verbal and physical abuse were a regular occurrence. Even after his parents divorced, his drunken father continued to wreak havoc on the family. Not surprisingly, by the time Joe found alcohol in his teens, it was a welcome relief for his fear and loathing. Finding comfort in the bottle, he drank at every opportunity, yet suffered few of the consequences that teenage and young adult alcoholics experience. Like so many who escape alcohol's ruinous effects early on, he became a functional alcoholic. As an electrician's apprentice, Joe's on-the-job performance portended a promising career, but his disease had other ideas. Joe's functional alcoholism was rapidly eroded by his escalating drinking and pot smoking. Lost jobs, ruptured relationships, and other consequences were rapidly tanking his life. By age 26, Joe was sick and tired of the life he was leading and sought help from Alcoholics Anonymous. Joe's earnest yearning for a better life guided him to the right people and meetings in his hometown of Brisbane, Australia. Working with a good sponsor and studying the Big Book were augmented by frequent service commitments and sponsorship of other men in the program. In his travels across Australia and around the world, Joe plugs into local AA meetings wherever he goes. He also has regular Zoom meetings that he attends when he cannot make it to in-person meetings. Joe's story is one of contented sobriety brought about by active participation in Alcoholics Anonymous. Though the 17-hour time difference between us made it a challenge to schedule the interview, it was certainly well worth it. So sit back and enjoy the next 65 minutes of AA Recovery Interviews as we say good day to my awesome Aussie mate and AA brother, Joe S.
Hello everyone, my name is Joe, I'm an alcoholic.
Hi Joe, that's the standard response.
Yeah.
No, I get it. I want to thank you so much for doing the AA Recovery Interviews podcast with me today. We're on opposite sides of the world, and right now it's a little after 5 p.m. on Friday, but where you are, is it 9 a.m.?
Yeah, it's 9:05, Saturday morning.
Saturday morning. I should have bought some lottery tickets tonight. That way you could tell me what the winning numbers were when they get chosen later.
I don't know if they bring you any happiness, but they'll bring you a lot of money and a lot of friends that just turn up out of the woodwork. But yeah, I don't know if the happiness would come with that.
That's right. That's right. Well, you and I guess, met in a online Zoom meeting that we attend, and I had a chance to hear you share, and what little I heard of your story was fascinating. And I'm always interested in people's total stories, not only the what it was like part and the what happened, but the what it's been like since you got sober. In what ways, on a daily basis, is AA integrated into your life?
Okay, so for me, I wake up in the morning, I do my prayers, my little ritual, and then I go into work. And when Zoom and COVID came, it was one of the best things that ever happened to me, because I would tap in while I'm driving to work. I would tap in with you, and that's where I met you, while I'm driving to work, into a Zoom meeting on Zoom. And then during the day, I'm an open book, because I might be the only big book people see. So during the day, if I see someone, and obviously if I smell someone, I'll throw hints out there. Like I'm fishing. I'll throw hints out there. And then if they don't bite, I walk away.
So you're attracting them with your sobriety?
Yeah. I've had people say to me in the past, I work at schools, so my swear words become fish and sugar honey iced tea. And frogs. I say frogs. And what happened was once they said, so Joe, what church do you go to? It's raining here as well. I don't know if you can hear that, but I'd say I don't go to church. I don't do it for 2 hours on a Sunday. I try and practice this way of life all week.
Uh-huh.
They look at me funny. Because if I can go out into the world and bring a smile, right, I feel like I've done, and there might be a lot of my past in that, because of what I saw when I was a kid and what I went through when I was a kid.
Mm-hmm.
So I've become a bit of a people pleaser.
Mm.
And it's stuff that I'm working on today. It's like, because I'm not perfect, I'm no saint. But yeah, I try and integrate this way of life, the AA way of life, this new design for living that we've been given so freely, in a daily basis. I was talking with someone, just for instance, no names involved. I was talking with someone yesterday about the nuts and bolts of AA,
Mm-hmm.
and she's in Australia. And then I'd be talking with, as we're speaking with her, a guy from India, from AA. And that's the beauty of Zoom. I love it. I love it.
It really is. And Zoom made possible, it was born out of necessity, but it made possible people connecting who never would have connected before. And to me, it was a real gift to people in the program who wanted to stay in touch. Now, you've been sober how long, Joe?
26 years. 27, Christmas Eve.
Christmas Eve is your sobriety day?
Sobriety date, yeah.
That must have been a hell of a celebration that night. Tell me about it.
It is and it isn't, because, see, we're always on holiday. Because of the gifts of sobriety, we go all the way around the world.
Uh-huh.
So at Christmas time, to escape the heat here in Australia,
Mm-hmm.
we go on holiday. I take my wife and my 2 kids. And we, like, this year, at Christmas Eve, I'm on a beach in Patong in Thailand, dancing with my family, with my wife and my 2 kids. None of us were drunk. None of us were under the influence of anything.
Mm-hmm.
But everyone around us was under the influence. And we didn't look back. And you'll understand it. The Sodom and Gomorrah and stuff, look back and turn to stone. I didn't look back in judgment. I just understood where they're doing their thing. I can't make them sober. I can't keep them drunk. And we had a ball. And that's what happens every 24th of December. We're in Scotland. We're in Glencoe in Scotland.
Mm-hmm.
In a little place called Ballachulish. Or we're in the Himalaya. I know it sounds like I'm blowing smoke up my own bottom here, but in Nepal with my kids, trekking the part of I think it's the Eastern Himalayas or whatever. We did Poon Hill as a family.
The cool thing about that is that you're opening yourself up to so many neat things. Dancing on that beach, someone with 26 years who isn't working a good program might be looking at the people dancing and drunk with kind of a euphoric recall. But when you're centered in the program and settled into sobriety long term, you can do exactly what you did, and that was observe, maybe even be a little bit entertained by it, but knowing that that's not going to be you anytime soon. And what a gift to your wife and kids.
Yeah, and the beauty, because my higher power works in mysterious ways.
Uh-huh.
The beauty of where we stayed in that place in Phuket, there was an AA meeting just like around, say, 5-minute walk away from our hotel.
Oh, wow.
And every Thursday I would go there because I love AA. If it was up to me, I'd be going to a meeting every 5 minutes. I'd be oozing this stuff in. I would. Then my wife, like, well, she's on the bed, and my son's down there. He's looking after at the moment after the operation. And because of AA and because of you people, we can live a life beyond our wildest dreams.
Yes.
And it's all a gift. And what do we have to do? Just give it away.
Yeah, give it away to keep it. Now, how old are your kids?
I've got 2 boys, right? One is 22 and the other one is 23. It was close. Like I was opening meetings and I was running to meetings and helping people and sponsoring people. So my spiritual bank was topped up.
Yeah.
But saying that, I did chase them around the room to smack their bum.
Mm-hmm.
And so the alcoholism, my way of thinking was still in there, and the design of that thinking,
Mm-hmm.
as we all know, it came from my parents, and I was playing and acting that out with my own kids and my own children. And eventually, once I seen it for what it truly was, I stopped.
Yeah, I think we all do that to a certain extent. Just about the time that we're saying that we do or don't want to be like our parents about certain behaviors, suddenly we find ourselves in those behaviors and saying, how did that comes so quickly and easily without even having to think about it. And it's hardwired when we're really small, I think, and when we're really innocent. We have no defense against the wrong information and the wrong behavior. So I get that. So you grew up in a home. What was your family of origin like, Joe?
I was in Liverpool in the UK. So I emigrated to Australia in 1994. We did a working holiday. In 96, me and my wife came here. But I was born in Liverpool, and my mum and dad were alcoholic. They still, my dad still drinks today. My mum died. She died on the 11th of June 2011.
Mm-hmm.
I was brought up in that family. I was the youngest of 6. I had 3 sisters and 2 brothers. And I loved them all. I loved my mum, I loved my dad. But as a kid, it was a dysfunctional family. There's a lot of pain in the family, a lot of hurt in the family. As the performances between mum and my dad were being played out in front of me, I'd be there trying to keep them happy as a people pleaser, as a child, as a young child,
mm-hmm.
so that they wouldn't fight and argue. And I saw stuff that kids shouldn't see. I have 3 sisters and 2 brothers. I'm the youngest. So when they were all leaving one by one to escape, to live their life to escape.
Oh, I get that.
I was the last one in the house, and I felt so much guilt and shame, Catholic guilt and shame.
Yeah, that's interesting. Usually the last ones are the ones who get, well, whatever aggressions or, whatever there is about the parents, the way they express it to the older kids, by the time they get to the youngest, they're either spent or they're just getting started. And sounds to me like it was a tough situation with both of your parents being alcoholic.
Well, they split up when I was 12.
Uh-huh.
But my dad would still walk past the house drunk of a Saturday night, and he'd bang and smash the window, because we used to get the window replaced on the Monday. And if he didn't, there'd be chips smeared all over the window and chicken smeared all over the window, because he'd go to Chippy, get chicken and chips, walk past, and he'd knock on the door. And yeah, we used to, as kids, me and my brother Reg, we'd take the television upstairs,
mm-hmm.
like lift it up as kids upstairs, so we could watch the TV. And then when the door knocked, we'd turn all the lights off. And there's so many things inside my head. Like I when you open a can of worms, all those worms have little names on them. They have little experiences that I lived in my life.
Mm-hmm.
But once I recognize each worm for what it truly is, like when a door is closed or a door's opened, even if I'm watching a show now, if I'm watching a show and somebody leaves the door open, I feel anxious and I can't watch the show.
Mm-hmm.
And I looked into it, because what was happening is I was, as a kid, screamed at. Were you born in a barn? You're letting the cold in. Shut the door. Shut the door. And just little things like that. But then when I came on, into sobriety, I can see it for what it truly is and let it go.
Yeah, and it's so tough to do until you really get to the point in your program where you can look back objectively and maybe cut some of the feeling out of it a bit to get to the facts.
Yeah.
I know for me the facts was I grew up in a home where my dad was extremely violent and abusive, and my mother was emotionally absent, so there was nobody to intercede and protect us. And, it was so bad that my older brother, he left home at 17, ran away from home at 17 so he could join the Army in 1967 and went to Vietnam. Things were so bad in my house, my brother had to go to Vietnam in the worst year of the war to get away from it.
To have some peace.
You had to have some peace, but it was a wild time. But looking back, I've been able to forgive them. I've been able to find out what my part was and make whatever amends were still needed to my other siblings and to my parents before they died. Liverpool, isn't it more of an industrial center in England? Yeah,
we're near the docks. Yeah, so my dad, when we were kids, because there was no work there, he went overseas and he went to Munich and Saudi Arabia.
Uh-huh.
We'd love him coming home because he'd bring us all these toys. And I can remember Polizia, Polize, was on a police car with a wire and connected with a remote. As a kid, I can still remember it. But the problem was I'd start playing with that, and then it would start behind me. The performances would start behind me, and and then we started getting fearful of him coming back home, because we had that everything was okay. But then when he left, What my mum was going through started happening at home, and as a kid I should have been out talking to other people, like other girls, stuff like this. But instead I'm talking to mum, she's saying she's going to kill herself, and I'm emptying the diazepam and putting flour in it as a placebo. So as a kid I didn't want, obviously, my mum to die. But all of that design, all of that way of thinking, all of that way I was living.
Yeah, young children should never have to do that.
I know.
That it's so emotionally scarring to have to take the poison away from your parents, or have to intercede in their arguments, or just having to be there to witness it has got to be terrifying.
Yeah. And then going to the petrol station at like 2:00 in the morning for cigarettes and milk or something like that, and then getting escorted back by two thugs who wanted a bottle of water and a screwdriver. And then my brother come down with the peacemaker, because we had to survive in this area. A peacemaker was the stick off the axe, and we wrote on the peacemaker. Because when they walked in the house, my brother came down, took his top off, grabbed the peacemaker and asked them to leave, and they left. Yeah, that was the eerie thing. But the beauty of this now is I see it for what it is. And as you said, you forgive your mum and your dad, because this is all I have. This is my life now. And if I can't see the past and accept the past for what it is, because I can't change it, if I can't accept it, yeah.
I get that. So how old were you when you took your first drink, outside of just sips as a child?
Yeah, the first sip I had was 8. My dad come back from Germany, give me alcohol snaps. I ran around the room, pretended I was drunk. But the first drink I ever took was like this guy walked into town like John Wayne. He straggled into town and he introduced me to the loony juice called Thunderbirds. And it was like there was a blue type and a red type. And one was stronger and one was more expensive. But because I could go shopping for my mum in the local Mace, I could get any alcohol at an early age or cigarettes at an early age. So I walked in and got this bottle of Thunderbirds, and me and this guy, I can't remember his name, but I know he liked Helen Pruden. And we went on the field, drank this, like the bottle with, I think they call it Jerry Don, where you put your fingers in the loops. And then when I woke up in the morning, my face was hurting. And I used to black out. But when I blacked out, I'd get a vision, like a flash of what happened, and then I could see me and him fighting. And then we were best mates, and all I wanted to do was get back to that feeling where it was okay to be me. That was the thing. It was okay to be me when I was drunk.
Sounds kind of magical.
The golden elixir, that magic potion.
So how old were you when that occurred?
I think I was around 12.
Yeah, that seems to be the common age for people, anywhere from 12 to 14. So after that time, you said you blacked out. Did you get sick, or was there anything about that experience that might have turned you off to drinking again, or was it so thoroughly enjoyable that you couldn't wait until the next time?
I know I was thinking about it during the school. At this moment now, I can't remember me throwing up. But I know that what I started doing is I'd have a bottle of milk in one pocket and a bottle of Pernod, like a flask of Pernod in the other. So I must have been throwing up, but my mind didn't make a big mental note on it. Because I had to people told me I had to be taught to drink. I had to line my stomach with milk or food, and then I could drink. But I was drinking pure Pernod, which is like pure. It was strong stuff.
What is that?
Pernod is like anise, like cassis in France. It's like an aniseed drink, you could say.
It's like cough syrup, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, like cough medicine, yeah. And that was you could say that was one of the first things I hit. Because I used to, I could projectile vomit as a kid without even being sick. So I'd get sent home, and it was a trick I used to do to get time off school when I was being bullied. And I can remember the medicine, the pink medicine that I would take and the feeling that I had. But yeah, and that's the thing about the cough medicine as well. There's a bit of good stuff in that as well as a kid. But then it was just, because we used to hang around the park and we'd get cans. And I was an apprentice then, so apprentice electrician. So I'd get all the sweet drinks. So I'd be getting Southern Comfort.
Oh, yeah.
While everyone else was drinking cheap cans of beer, I was drinking Southern Comfort because I liked the sweet taste.
Because you were making some money along the way?
Yeah, that's what it was. I could spend it on the good stuff.
Tell me the role that pubs played in your teenage years and your early drinking years.
I think I started going to pubs at age 16, 17. It was early. and it was a place called the Queens, and Sweet Child of Mine was on the radio, and we'd all drink a thing called Newcastle Brown, and I'd go home with a complete stranger every week. Well, with this face, every second week. Yeah,
It's a nice face.
but yeah, I know. But this is, I say it as a joke.
Yeah, I get it.
You know what we're like. We think bad of ourselves, but really we're not that bad.
Oh, yeah,
We're not that bad.
yeah,
But our heads go like that.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. So, I've interviewed quite a number of people from that meeting that you and I go to, about a dozen different folks from Great Britain. And the pubs always seem to factor as a big part of the drinking that goes on in the later teenage years and early adulthood. What was there about the pubs themselves that seemed to legitimize drinking and maybe alcohol abuse after a period of time?
For me, the pubs. When I was really young, I'd go to the pub to get my dad, drag him home on a Sunday afternoon.
Oh yeah.
Right, and then he'd come home and start his things. So I didn't like the pub thing, but hanging around the parks, I'd be drinking and smoking pot. That'd be okay. And then on the weekend, when we started going to the Queens, that was just to dance and to cop off. Cop off is like to find a mate, sort of thing.
Yeah.
Because I went to the rave scene as well I know we're not going to talk about that, from around 18 to, well, can if you want, but 18 to 20, I was a raver. So the only time I'd be going into pubs was to score off some of the old guys, because that's where they did their wheeling and dealing, you could say. Yeah, so pubs weren't a real big thing for me, like as in the English way. But saying that, as an apprentice, I worked in pubs. I worked in the Whitbread and Tetley pubs back in the Liverpool area. That was part of our job.
Fixing electrical issues, yeah.
Yeah. When people are in the pubs and they're all drunk, twisting the lights, we'd have to go there and fix them the day after. Or outside floodlights, install them. Or we used to install ugly lights because people never wanted to leave the club. So we installed these floodlights. We used to call them ugly lights, because what would happen is at the end of the night, they'd switch the switch, the whole pub would be illuminated and everyone would go, oh, and they'd scatter like rats.
You'd see how ugly everybody is, I get it.
Exactly, yeah, that's what we used to call them, ugly lights. Yeah, I was there too as well. I was crawling across the floor trying to find this lady's shoe once, and I felt like I was like Prince Charming and Cinderella, and I found the shoe, and it was so in my head, the real was becoming unreal. So I walked up and I found the girl and I handed the shoe, and she said thank you and walked away with the guy in her arm. I was like, what the beep?
Oh my.
But yeah, that's the sort of stuff that happened. So pubs weren't really a big thing for me.
Mm-hmm.
But it was the clubs, the dancing, the look at me.
The raves, yeah, you're talking about. I get that. That was
yeah.
a big part of that particular generation too, wasn't it?
Yeah.
What kind of consequences did you have from your drinking early on that might have made you think you better either tone it down, or you better lighten up, or you better cut down?
Okay, well, I lost my job I saved my job as an apprentice electrician. I got the card saying I was an electrician. Then they laid me off for more experience elsewhere. And so I lost my job. Because of that, the money wasn't coming in, so I started to tail some of my habits. Like, it wasn't big habits, but they were habits. And then I went to the job club and they said, there's a job in south of France. Anyone want to work overseas? And I put my hand up. So within a few weeks, I'm working in south of France as a maintenance guy on a campsite. Mm-hmm. And people go on holiday to get two things, get laid and get drunk. And it was my job to help them have fun. And then I'd be diving in the pool, fully clothed, banging my head, and everyone was running around the pool because I nearly killed myself. I drunk drove with a Land Rover and smashed the caravan off its legs and off the sewer pipe, and I had to fix that. I ended up putting a guy in hospital. He was bigger and stronger than me, and then when we woke up in the morning, I couldn't find the vehicle, and he wanted me to drive him to the hospital because I broke his ribs. And I didn't know any of this stuff. And then somebody threatened me with a shotgun. So maybe a little thing, like I was going down the wrong path
Sounds like it.
when all of this stuff was happening, yeah.
How old were you? Were you in high school? Was this after?
Oh, I was 20. At the age of 12, when all of this was happening, Mum and my dad, I used to disconnect the electricity, the meter. And that's why I become an electrician. So I used to, you know the word for that anyway. So then I went overseas. Once I became an apprentice electrician, so I was 15 to around 20. Then I went over to France. So the period like of my hoo-ha, you could say, was small. So the whole lot stopped. Like I got to where I was 26. I got to Australia when I was 23. I met my girlfriend in the south of France, and then she would become a wife when we come over. Then we come over to Australia around the age of 22. So it was all compressed, which I'm really glad it was, because that story that you talk about, the drinking, we'd go into those pubs and there'd be black marks where the guys would sit with their hair on the wall. Every day he'd sit there, old Jono, because I used to work in pubs as well, work and live in pubs.
So all these things that were happening to you, the drinking, the blacking out, the fights, and everything were happening within this concentrated period in your early 20s. So everything was compressed. When this was going on, did anybody call you on it? You said you got fired. Was that for drinking on the job or coming in drunk or not coming in? What was that about?
When I got fired, it was like he said they laid me off for experience elsewhere, me and the other apprentice electrician, but they employed him back and they didn't employ me. And I think it was to do with my partying and to do with my drinking. Because some of the electricians, they'd take me into the pub where we're working, and the switchboard was downstairs, and he'd tell me to take an empty toolbox down, and I'd fill the toolbox up with baby sham, the cherry little drink. And then I'd take the full toolbox back up to the van. So I was stealing alcohol from the pubs. So there could have been so many factors involved, but it was what they said to me was just the fact that I had to get experience elsewhere. And in a way, it was the best thing that ever happened. They kicked me out.
Yeah, it was nice of them to do it that way, wasn't it? I mean, they could have come down hard on you and made it really difficult.
It was, because I wouldn't be here now. Yeah, I wouldn't have been able to get a job anywhere else. Yeah.
But having you leave the country was a pretty elegant way to get out of that too, wasn't it?
Oh, it was a gift. It was a gift because when I went over to France, we had a day every day because we were entertainers, we were performers. That's why I keep saying performers. We would be on a Tuesday, we'd have barbecue night. On a Friday, we'd have cabaret night. On a Wednesday, we'd take them to excursions, and then we'd have like weekends off. But all of them, for me, involved drinking and a little bit of smoking. But drinking, yeah, it was a big thing. I wouldn't wash the dishes after the barbecue unless they give me bottles of sangria.
So you were able to do all your drinking on the dole then? Someone else was paying for all your alcohol at that point?
I was only on the dole for around 6 months back in England.
Oh, okay.
And then I left England to south of France, and that's where I did all of this, the compressed, where it was every single night. And it was to the extent where I was scaring my boss because I was diving in the pools and nearly killed myself. I was driving drunk. I was jumping on the back of motorbikes with people who were doing 100 mile an hour. Yeah.
Did you ever get pulled over by the police? Did you ever have a drunk driving charge?
Nope. I was looked after. When I was young, I was thrown in a cell, and it was for one night. And this is where I believe I was never picked up. Because they pulled me in the cell and they took me all the stuff that you get taken off in case you want to harm yourself. And they found a little bit of glass in my shoe. And they thought it was from... The reason they got me in the cell was because a car pulled up... It was just before we went to the disco. Pulled up and then drove off. And the car was stolen. And they thought I was connected to it and I didn't know anyone or anything. So they said, would you like to press charges at the end of the night? I said, no. And then I got pulled one night. I was drunk. I was high on stuff. I had a waistcoat on, and the steam was coming off me. And I had 6 people in the car. My higher power was looking after me, I tell you. I told them my name. They gave me a bit of paper saying a producer. They just looked at me and laughed and said, just go away. Because I had an answer. They said, so why were you speeding? I said, I got a Nikkei carburettor. It's a racing car. I'm not used to putting my foot down. They said, okay. So why are your eyes so red and panned? I said, I went to the baths today, smell me, because you could smell the chlorine. I used to love the baths. I used to love water.
Uh-huh.
And then they said, okay, so what about 6 people? I said, oh, well, it's raining. And I put my friends in. Look, they're walking away. They all left me. I said, look, they're walking away now. And he went, oh, here's a bit of producer, just go away. And I got away with that. But I think when they type in my name, they know that even though my dad was not so nice, he was also Santa Claus in the area I was born in. And he went round to people's houses and gave them sweets and give them toys at Christmas time.
Mm-hmm.
And then he'd come home and beat the shit out of my mum. But it's not the point. He was a good guy out in the street. And I call that a home devil, street angel. And I never wanted to be like that. Towards the end, I tuned into that.
In what ways?
Well, I hit my wife twice. I'm not proud of it.
This was while you were still drinking?
While I was drinking, yeah. And it was in Australia. It was backpacking in Brighton. When we got married in Brighton in 1996. The same year we came over here. And then when we came over here, after she kicked me out in 97, I smacked her. And I'm not proud of it. But I say it in the meetings. Why? Because I don't want to be as sick as my secrets.
Yeah. That must have been scary as hell, though. After you did it, thinking about what your dad had done to your mother all those years, that must have been terrifying to think, maybe I'm becoming my father.
Yeah. This is right at the end. This is the doors for AA clicking beside me, and I didn't know. And my higher power was trying to push me in the doors, and I wasn't going to go.
Yeah, what was her response after you did that?
She just fell on the couch, because I can remember it was about. She stole my cheese, and this is what it was about. I said, "You can have the effing cheese," and I grabbed it, smacked her, and pushed her. And she fell on the couch, and my heart dropped. My heart dropped, because like those visions that I was saying about when I blacked out, I was getting like a epiphanies of I'm my dad, and I'm seeing what my dad did to my mum, and my wife's seeing what my dad did to my mum, like because she went. We go over every 2 years, back to England, and I make the hi dad, love ya, and give him a hug and all of that stuff. And then we go up to Scotland, or we go down to Devon and stuff like that, and show my kids my dad, their granddad. I love him and I forgive him for what he did. And with that, I love this guy here that's sitting in front of you now, and I forgive him for what he did. Because what we give out, we get back. And that, I get goosebumps. That's what you guys have taught me, is that ear gate, eye gate, whatever I put into my head through what I see and through what I hear is the only thing I've got to play with today. That's why we try and make our higher power a channel of our peace. We try and let them flow through us so that it can flow out of us. And as I said before, I might be the big book people see. I don't want to see a bad one. I want them to see the good version so that they come in if they ever need help. Yeah.
We'll be right back. My friends, if you're enjoying my AA Recovery Interviews podcast, check out my latest audiobook, Alcoholics Anonymous, the story of how more than 100 men have recovered from alcoholism. This is the word-for-word, cover-to-cover reading of the first printing of the first edition of the Big Book, published in 1939. It's a relaxing and meaningful way to listen to the Big Book anytime, any place. Have a free listen at Audible, Amazon, or iTunes. While you're there, enhance your program with another audiobook I produced, Lost Stories of the Big Book, 30 original stories missing from the third and fourth editions of Alcoholics Anonymous. It's an engaging audiobook that brings these stories to life for AA members who've never seen them. These timeless testimonials were originally cut to make room for newer stories in the third and fourth editions. But their vitally important messages of hope are as meaningful today as when they were first published. Many listeners will hear these stories for the very first time. Listen to a free sample of Lost Stories of the Big Book on Audible, Amazon, or iTunes. It's also available as a Kindle book or in paperback from Amazon if you'd like to read along. You're gonna love it. And we're back. Are your parents still alive?
My mum died in 2011. My dad is, right, he was born in 1940. So what's he now? He's 85. He's in his little flat over there in Liverpool, and his faculties are starting to change.
Mm-hmm.
My wife's name's changed. He says, say hello to Julie for me. Now, Julie's my brother's wife. And I say, first time I'd say, oh, yeah, okay, Dad, no worries. Because I thought it was just a mistake. And then he said it again.
Yeah.
And I said, yeah, I will, Dad. I'll give Jenny my love. And then your love. And then he goes, oh, yeah, sorry, and laughs, haha, silly me, and all of this stuff. Because my dad puts himself up on the cross as well. Yeah, he crucifies himself for what he's doing and what he's done.
Does he look back on that with the same kind of desire to change the past if he could, or does he ignore that fact?
I think there's a bit of both of that.
Uh-huh.
Like when he starts to get a bit melancholy, he's thinking like, I shouldn't on himself. And I should have not done that, or I should have been different. And then other times, he's not. He's too. When you just said that, then I seen him in Brighton, me and my wife, and he's singing Tom Jones with the karaoke. It's a big performance, and look at him, and I tuned into that. I'm yeah, and that night I can remember. My dad saw the jealousy in me because my wife started to talk to someone else, and I started screaming, shouting at my wife in front of my dad. So he's seen a little bit of him in me when I was drinking.
That's got to be tough.
Yeah.
My dad softened up the older he got, and then it got to the point where by the time I was ready to make whatever amends I needed to make and talk to him about the things he had done, the dementia had already started to set in, so I had the opportunity to talk to him about things that he had no recollection of, which is a weird way to do a ninth step. You walk in, you say, let's talk about what went on, and he has no recollection.
Yeah.
And it's almost like, and he even said to me, I don't remember doing that. I couldn't have done that. And so it was my advice to anybody is get the amends and work the steps that involve getting with other people early before they either die or something keeps them from being able to really participate in it.
Yeah.
So you at some point had the opportunity to do that with your dad during your sobriety?
I'm smiling now. They won't see it on the recording. I'm smiling now because of what you said then. Just gives me goosebumps, and it opened up a door in my mind. My dad used to work in the Merchant Taylors Boys Club, and he used to be the cleaner, and he'd set up and fix little bits and pieces in this place. So while he split up with my mum, I'd be going there with all my friends, so-called friends. And then what would happen is I'd walk back and sit at the top of the street and smoke and drink pot at the top of our road. But I would not talk to my dad when he's in this place. I'd just smile at him. This is my father. I'd just smile and walk past because of the fear that was inside of me. And then when he'd walk past us on the road, and when I was there smoking, I didn't want him to see. I felt bad. But in sobriety, I felt bad in a different way. Because just imagine how you as a father would feel walking down the street and your son is cowling, looking away from you.
Yeah.
Please don't see me. Please don't see me. So I said it, this is a few years ago, I said it to my dad. I said, listen, Dad, I don't know if you remember this, but when I was at the top of the street, you know, I used to smoke, because he's totally against drugs. I said, you know, I used to smoke pot and drink at the top of the street. And he goes, what are you talking about? No. And he started going into one. I said, no, Dad, listen, I'm sorry. That must have made you feel like shit. I'm sorry about that. I'm getting emotional now talking about it. And don't worry about it. He didn't, because inside he was most probably bursting with joy, but he's been boys don't cry.
Yeah.
Boys don't cry would be ringing in his ears, and they ring in my ears today. But today, I watch shows with my boys, and I cry, and they look at me and smile, because it's okay to cry today. I've had my son curling up on a ball on the couch, and I love him, and that's the thing, is that the opposite of fear for me is faith, and all faiths believe in one thing, and that's love, and they practice love, and that's what this program's given to me.
So after that episode with your wife, obviously you saw in yourself what maybe scared you straight at that point. What sort of reaction did she have past that episode? Did she want to walk out? Had she had enough of you? What was her frame of mind about you in the final days of your alcoholism?
She'd already kicked me out. At that stage that I pushed her when she took the cheese, she'd already kicked me out. So I'm living over in West End in Brisbane, and she's living in New Farm.
Uh-huh.
And the course that I was doing was a course that came like this thing through the phone call. It was a lady, and I was sweet talking her. It was $80 worth of gifts for $8,000. All of this, the other way around, all of this. And I started doing this codependency course, and my wife noticed a change in me. Now, I didn't know that the course that I was doing was based on the 12 steps of AA. It was based on prayer, meditation. It was based on getting out of self and all of this, and getting connected to your feelings so you can see the true self and all of that stuff. So she came back into my life, but she was still living separate from me. So when this happened, I wouldn't see her for another week. And in that week, I'd be lying down in bed, and the voices in my head would be, I shouldn't have said, I should have done, she deserved, she deserved what I, and then all of a sudden I would be an angel in the fact that she stole my cheese. It was her fault that I pushed her. It was her fault that I smacked her. And I'd play this tape in my head over and over again. And these voices in my head would lullaby me to sleep. And then I'd wake up in the middle of the night. I'd be scared of the dark. I was going to work. I was having an anxiety attack. So it was getting to the extent where something was going to pop. And when we had this thing happen, me and my wife, she started doing this codependency course as well. And we went to the course together, and the lady that was running the course, she said, oh, you might benefit from doing some counselling. I think it was on the 15th of December. She talked about counselling. And me and my wife went in, and I talked about what happened. And she talked, and she said, you might have a problem with drinking. And that was the door for AA just went, opened right up. She said, you might have a problem with drinking. And she gave me like a Pathfinder, which is the Share magazine, the grapevine for you guys, the how-to. And I put it in my pocket. And on the 24th of December, because I didn't drink from the 15th, 24th of December, I thought, I can't drink, but I'll take drugs. I smoke pot. But then that was my last man-altering drug. That's why that's my sobriety date. Then on the 31st December, I got to my first AA meeting. But my wife, was there in the background because she's special, she's beautiful, and I'm blessed to have her.
She certainly sounds like it, and would probably have to be that way to forgive you and let you back into her life after such a horrendous thing to happen.
Yeah.
You know, that's somewhat similar to my story in that my wife was seeing a therapist about issues that were really surrounding my alcoholism, and I was really in favor of her seeing the therapist because I thought all my problems are really her problems. I don't have any problems. But her therapist, who I so desperately wanted her to continue to see because it was taking the heat off of me, her therapist said, I can't work with you unless your husband stops drinking. And so I got an ultimatum late in December of 1987, which was basically, if you want to drink and use drugs, you can do it all you want. I thought, oh, well, great. And she said, but I won't be here. I will be out of your life. And so there I had the choice to make. And I'd only been married a year and a half, so the marriage was going downhill really quickly. And whenever that happened, I don't know why I stopped for that, but it was a choice that I'm really glad I made either her or the booze and drugs. You mentioned pot earlier, too. I was a big pot smoker.
Yeah.
Did you always drink when you were smoking pot or smoke pot when you were drinking?
No, it's funny. Like as a kid, I was taught to drink, but because of what was happening in the house, I always had I didn't like what it did to people.
Mm-hmm.
Hence me being a vegetarian and kind. I don't like harming animals either. And then as I went raving from 18 to 20, it was like I looked down on drinking. I'm not going to be like that, so I did all of that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But I smoked pot all the way through everything. I smoked because it was just to get me out of me. I smoked pot when I was like around 15 to the age, I'd say 22. So it was only 7 years of smoking pot. But my next door neighbour was a dealer, and I go in there and see him. would look after the bits that had crumbled off the sides and help each other because it was all red seal, Moroccan red seal or whatever.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, and I was the guy that went and hugged people.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'd go and see my friend and hug him. Then I'd go back to the person I hugged. I was the runner in between people as well in the clubs.
So your first AA meetings that you started to go to after that Christmas Eve, what were those meetings like?
They were beautiful.
What do you remember about those first meetings when you walked in the door? Did you know anybody or?
No. When I went to the first meeting, it was New Year's Eve, and there was a guy there. He was quite tall. He had long hair, had a fanny part, which is where the hair goes over left and right. And I started talking to him, and it was his New Year's resolution to get sober. So we were both newcomers at the door in AA, early in AA.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what the guy on the phone told me. He said, get there early, don't get there late. So I got there early. And he also said, listen to the similarities. So me and him are talking. And it's weird. I walked into the door and it was like he disappeared. I'd never seen him again in my whole life. I'd never seen him again. But when I walked into that door, they greeted me with love, compassion, and understanding. Because they'd been where I've been.
Mm-hmm.
And then when they started opening their voice, I thought my wife had said, say this, say that, because he'll relate to this, he'll relate to that. Because you guys talk the way I think. I was like, whoa, this is amazing. And obviously there was good-looking girls there as well, and they were all giving hugs.
Yeah.
So in my mind, I'm thinking, oh, well, she's all right, she's all right. And I went back for the hugs, the tea, the coffee, and the way you guys spoke the way I thought.
Listen, if it takes hugs and tea and coffee to get somebody to go and stay, my feeling is it's innocent enough until it isn't that it's a good thing that they're doing that. It makes people want to go back. I give a lot of hugs. I'm a greeter in several of the major meetings that I go to, and I just love doing it because I may be the only person walking in the door, whether they're in AA a long time or not. I may be the only person they talk to. And, at least I want them to know you're welcome in the meeting. And then when they leave, I de-greet them. In other words, I wish them well. And so if nothing else, the person's been talked to twice in the meeting. Have you ever noticed that people in some meetings, they'll come in and they'll sit down, they'll pull out their phones, and they're sitting right next to each other, and they don't know, and they're almost oblivious? I've had the experience of walking into meetings and seeing that, and I literally will say to the guy, because I'll usually know both of them, but I'll say, Bob, do you know Jim over here? And he said, no, I don't. And two guys sitting right next to each other who haven't even been introduced.
Yeah.
It takes somebody else to pull that together. I digress. So you were mentioning your first meeting. Did they focus the meeting on you, and was it a typical newcomer meeting?
There's two meetings there's a heap of meetings because I was told to get to 90 meetings in 90 days. So the first meeting I went to, I think it was either a Thursday or Friday. And on a Thursday they have a steps meeting, and on a Friday this is a new farm in Brisbane, they'd have a big book study. So I went in, and because I was the newcomer, new kid on the block, they changed the meeting to step 1, step 2, step 3. And every time we had a newcomer come in, they would change it to step 1, step 2, step 3. Which I didn't know what they were doing then, but they were making me feel welcome. They were helping other people relate to these newcomers so that they felt welcome. Like the greeter, you said the greeter. Because I was there so early, it was like I was the greeter. And today, I go in, get a coffee, sit outside my meeting, and I'm the greeter, like you.
It's a great way to get to know everybody in the meeting. It's just like being a leader or a chairperson for a particular meeting. People get to know you by virtue of the role that you play in that particular meeting. Now, when you went to some of your first meetings, what did you know about sponsorship, or what were you told about sponsorship, and how long did it take for you to get a sponsor?
The first ever meeting I went to, I walked up to a guy called Stay, and he says, "What do you think, Joe?" And I just smiled from ear to ear, and I said, "I think I'm an alcoholic." And then he said, "You just got to do the suggested things, Joe. Join a group, get a sponsor, go through the steps, and get well." That was the mantra at that group, the Newfound group. And I joined that group. And I got myself a sponsor. and it was like a temporary sponsor. I started to doubt him, which isn't a good thing, because I'd ask him a question and he'd say 24. But then I'd come and ask someone else and they'd say 36, and then I'd come and ask someone else and they'd say 42. So I doubted him because I cross-examined his answers. And then I didn't have faith in him. So I had to get myself somebody I could trust. So it was told 90 meetings in 90 days. The first sponsor I got in Caboolture, I can remember the where he was standing near the coffee pot, and I walked up to him and his name was Tony, and I said, listen, can I, and I was scared shitless. And I said, would you be my sponsor? And he goes, yeah, sure, it'll be a blah, blah, blah. And he talked me through it. When we departed, my other sponsor said, but you've got to tell him, which I think is brilliant, because people need to know where they stand. I just said, listen, I've got myself a new sponsor, blah, 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 blah. And he said, oh, yeah, no worries, that's fine. And then the new sponsor, he was Aboriginal. He took me through the 12 steps. He took me to HADS, which is Monday night. Because I went every day for 2 years in my start-off sobriety. Every day I was going to a meeting. On Monday was HADS, Tuesday was Aboriginal Big Book, Wednesday was Damascus, Thursday Steps, Friday Big Book, Saturday was the Rotunda, and Sunday was in Kenmore, like a spirituals meeting. Yeah, and then start again.
What city?
This is all in Brisbane, all around the suburb of Brisbane, Brisbane, Australia, yeah.
You know, what you just said about the first sponsor saying to you about telling the guy who you were asking to be your sponsor after that, the thing that he told you about telling the other guy that you had a sponsor. Whenever anybody asks me, especially somebody who I've seen in meetings for a while, asks me to be their sponsor, I almost always ask them, do you have a sponsor? Have you had a sponsor all this time? And they say, yeah, I do. I did. So why do you want to get another sponsor? And invariably, Joe, it's something along the lines of, he's so busy, he's such a successful businessman, and he's so busy all the time, and he doesn't return my calls, and blah, blah, blah. And I say, you don't have a sponsorship problem, you have a scheduling problem. And what you need to do is to sit down with this man, because you're letting him sponsor you is helping him. And if you're pulling your sponsorship away from them, then that can't be good for him. So you need to see if there's something you can work out. And I think most of the time, Joe, what ends up happening is they get back with that sponsor and they sit down with them and they say, okay, let's come up with a schedule. You will call me at exactly this time, and you're accountable for it.
Yeah.
I really love the fact that your sponsor wouldn't let you get off the hook like that.
And he was good. We would talk every day, and it was just for 5 minutes, 10 minutes. Then 1 step per week. This is the way he took me through. 1 step per week. And if I was stuck on the step, we would keep going to the next week. And every night I would read that step. So I'd go home and I'd read that step. And if I had any questions, I could talk to it when we talked. And then we progressed to the next step, and etc. And at the same time, we were reading through the big book. And if I had any questions, he'd answer them. And that's the only way I do my sponsees now.
Are your sponsees a big part of your service work today?
I've got lots of service. That is a part of my service work. I don't know if it's a good thing or bad thing, but I don't chase them down. I used to in the early sobriety. I'd chase them around the table. If you're a newcomer, watch out, because Joe's come running. But now, if I say to them, because I'm so busy with my wife, with my family, with my job, with life itself, and with AA itself, I say, you call, I answer. In other words, I'm teaching you to walk, but I'm not going to carry you. You need to strengthen the muscles inside your leg and inside your back to keep you upright. Because if you have a dependency on me and I fall and I go and drink, you're going to collapse down with me. And they're like, okay, yeah. And I just say, you call, I answer.
So you're doing service work, you're studying the big book, you're praying every day, I'm assuming. What did you think about God when you saw him in the steps when you first walked into AA? And what was your spiritual life like previously?
So I love this bit. I love this. And even the fact, I know, same again, you gave me goosebumps just saying the word God. Because this is the part, to me, which takes me out of self. This is the part that saved me. Because I wanted the burning bush. I wanted the spiritual experience they talked about. I wanted what Bill got. I wanted the whole world to become multicolored, like The Wizard of Oz. Mm-hmm. There's no place like home group. There's no place like home group. I wanted that. I wanted something big to happen. And I was walking along the street to a meeting, and somebody over the road found $50. And I looked up to my higher power. Whatever it is, you can see around me, there's so many higher powers behind me. They all practice one thing, love. And I talked to him, I said, I don't find any money anymore. I don't find them because of my low self-esteem, my chin was stuck to my chest. And I'd walk along the street. I'd never stand in dog shit, but I'd always find money and gold and little bits and pieces along the path, along the way. Uh-huh. But since I come into sobriety, my head was raised and I'd stand in shit, and everything would be okay because I could just wipe the stuff off. But I never found any money. But then the voice in my head said, look over the road, Joe. And I'm like, yeah, what? I looked over the road, there's a little wad of money. There was a 50 and a 20. And I doubting Thomas. I said it again. I carried on walking up the road, found another 50. So I found $120. Walked into the AA meeting because it was on the way to the meeting. Told my friend, Wayne. We went outside and I found another 50.
Jeez.
I couldn't believe, it was raining. That's why I said, because the voice from my mom says to me that money is not the route to happiness. And that's why I said right at the beginning about the lottery. But when I have these experiences, these little things, these God moments, mm-hmm. Like when I was going through step 3, I'm walking down the road and this lady in front of me is doing the Z walk. And she stopped in front of me and she said, do you believe in God? With the funny accent like I just did. And I said, I try my best. And I carried on walking. Because I try my best. That's all I've got to do is try. Mm-hmm. Try. The last words in Just For Today. Try. And when I look back, she wasn't there. And now, whether that was just because she fell over the bush, because she was drunk, or whether, like that guy, the big Simone guy who found the $50, whether it was God orchestrating just miracles in my life, whether it was my higher power putting stuff on a daily basis for me to practice these principles, for me to help the guy who broke down at the roundabout at the airport where all the traffic was, for me to jump out the car and push him, for me to just be me. And that's the spiritual side of it. People talk to me about the leaves and the leaves on the tree. We have this symbiotic relationship where I breathe out carbon dioxide. That gives me oxygen. Mm-hmm. And the leaves on that tree turn around to get the sunlight of the spirit. And that sunlight of the spirit pours into me too. But I create these walls of fear. And the bricks are from all my past experiences that I built with the mortar of self-doubt and condemnation and despair. And oh my. And then eventually that sunlight won't come in. Mm-hmm. But as we speak now, the sun starts to pour through the room, because as I take down the bricks and see them what they truly are, when you crush a brick, it just turns into sand. And this is the beautiful part of the program, is that sand, as you're walking across the sand, and there's only one set of footprints, and they're not mine, that's when I realized there's something bigger and better up there.
The sunlight of the spirit, and
yeah.
God in me talks to God in you, and then we don't have to drink. That's what I love about AA and the spiritual part of it. So you've been in the program 26 years now, and can you remember any specific times where you felt like drinking and you didn't because you were in AA over the 26 years?
We opened a meeting in Glasshouse Mountains. Right, so we're talking Australia here, so it's a big place. And I was going to one meeting a week. Right, so my spiritual bank was topped up by service and stuff like that. This group that I was holding on to, the numbers started to die. The people started to stop coming to the meeting, and then there was eventually me and this lady. And eventually she stopped coming. So I was turning up to this meeting. I'd turn up and it'd be like, I think it was 7 o'clock, it starts. And by 7:15, nobody's going to turn up. So I'd open the big book and I'd read a little. And I'd close it and I'd go the week after. And nobody turn up. And eventually I started thinking, I'm driving past the RSL, which is Return Soldiers Leave Club, and they got pokie machines in there. So I'd go to the meeting for 15 minutes, no one turns up, and I'd go to the pokie machine. So that's a gambling, like the fruit machines, the slot machines, like in Las Vegas. Mm-hmm. And then I started gambling, and then all of a sudden, it crossed my mind. It was like, hey, hand in hand, mate. Hand in hand. A drink in one hand, the pokie machine in the other. So gambling and drinking. And it just popped into my head. And it scared the shit out of me.
I'll bet.
All of the voices of people that when they come back, and that's why it's lovely when we hear somebody saying, I come back, and how they got to the stage. Because I wasn't hearing the message. I wasn't hearing the 12 steps and the daily reflections and the big book. And as Bill said, I wasn't hearing any of the message. I was just reading a few pages resentfully because nobody was turning up to the meeting. And I had the keys, so I had to keep going.
Did you say that your meetings were dwindling at that point, that you were going to fewer and fewer meetings?
I was only going to one meeting a week, and that meeting was myself and looking at a book for 10 minutes.
Right. So the first 2 years in the program, you're in a meeting every day of the week.
Yeah.
When did the drop-off start to happen for you over the next number of years? And what was the reason for the drop-off?
So because of where I live, right, and as you can hear through the recordings, you can hear birds. There's like yellow-eyed honeymooners. There's rabbits jumping past. There's cockatoos and behind me in the tree. I live in the bush, so there's not hundreds of meetings around me.
Yeah.
So the meeting in Glasshouse, it takes me 35 minutes to get there. 40 minutes, 55 minutes. So I drive all day at work. I get up at 6. Sorry, I get to work at 6, so I get up at, what time is that? Say 4:30 to drive for an hour to get to work. Then I come home from work, so I get home around 3:30, 4 o'clock every single day. If there's traffic, it could be 4:30. If I've got overtime, 5. Mm-hmm. And then the meeting starts at 7. So I come in, give my wife a kiss. So I was going to one meeting a week because we moved into the countryside. And when the numbers started to dwindle, I was taking from the bank, the spiritual bank inside me. I was starting to make withdrawals when stuff happened at work. I'd pause when agitator, doubtful, intuitive information with flow. All of this stuff, I was doing it to the extent where I wasn't hearing the message. I wasn't hearing this is how we do it. This is how it works. Rarely have we seen a person fail. I wasn't hearing it. And eventually when that point come, I closed that meeting down. And I became like an AA tourist. I kept on floating from different meeting to different meeting until I found my base, which was in Budrum. And then that was a Sunday morning. So that means I didn't have to, Sunday afternoon, that means I didn't have to drive. But then COVID come, and it was a blessing and it was a curse.
How many years were you sober, Joe, when that decline in meeting attendance started to occur?
Okay, so 2019, I was sitting in the Canary Wharf in London with my family, and we're looking at this sign on the thing saying there was a virus, and I thought it was a computer virus. That's when COVID kicked in. So 2019 was when I got to that point of the meetings. I was still going, when we go overseas, I go to meetings in Covent Gardens. I go to meeting Neil's Yard in Covent Garden. Beautiful one Wednesday night if you're ever there. But when I come back, we're going to the bush. So what would happen is I would be travelling all around the world and then come back. So what would happen is we're sitting in Canary Wharf looking at this sign. And this was, the date for this was in 2019 when COVID kicked in. Mm-hmm. And that's when I was going back to the meetings. There was nothing there. There was this one person that was there, she not connecting to the room, and eventually she just left. Mm-hmm. She just left. She left the meeting, and then I was left by myself. And that was when I started thinking about going to pokie. The easiest, softer way, which was the drink.
That happened here too, where it seemed like it was a late third week in March. We were actually coming out of a Thursday meeting. It gets 90 to 100 men every week. I've been going to it for the last 35 years. I remember when we heard about it, and immediately everybody went home, and then some of the people from the club that I was going to at the same time started online meetings, and that's when I started to do the online meetings. The reason I asked you about how long you had been sober when your meeting attendance started to dwindle is because I think that happens all too frequently, and we don't hear enough about it. We just assume that if a guy is sober that he's going to meetings, but every now and then I'll run into a guy and I'll say, what was the last meeting you went to? And he said, well, I've just been so busy at work and this and that and the other thing. And it turns out he hasn't been to a meeting in a month.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to drink. But I'm not going to drink. Anytime I hear anybody start saying, "But I'm not going to this and that," but I'm not going to drink. It's like the little boy whistling in the dark.
Yeah.
And to keep his spirits up. And so I like for people to touch on that in these interviews, because it's real easy to think, well, Joe's got it made, 26 years. I mean, his life must be perfect. But that's why I also asked the question I'll ask you now. What were some of the highlights of the 26 years for you, where you can look back and say, had it not been for AA, what sticks out to you?
So 21 years was when I got to that point, 21 years sober. And in that 21 years before I got the Zoom period of my life, which is a blessing. But in that 21 years, I saw the birth of my two boys, and I was the first person to touch their head. And I went from the ward where my wife was with my son, down to the AA meeting, because it was on a Sunday. It was perfect. And I said I was a dad, and I cried while I was sitting on the floor because there was no seats. I've had so many little beautiful things happen, like handing like a big book to my boss, telling him to read to the employers. That was a spiritual experience, and now my boss knows me. He knows me for truly what I am. And I'm no saint, right? I go to meetings on the way to work and on the way home from work. And then I go to a meeting on a Sunday. I go on online on a Wednesday night and online on a Friday night. So that's my ritual. When I was in the Zoom era of my sobriety, I was walking outside because I was going to Zoom every day when I wasn't working. And something spiritual was happening. I could see I was connected to everything around me. I was driving out here, cutting the grass, and butterflies would fly by me. And you can see it's happening again. I'd feel this connection to people, places, and things that I'd never felt in my life. All those walls of fear and doubt and despair would drop down, and that sunlight was coming in, where I was connecting to people outside, and I could see them. I could literally see them for who they were, and I didn't care. And I'd walk up to these people and talk to them and just say, "How are you? How are you going?" And then a few weeks later, I'd bump into these people and understand that every single thing was meant to be. That would have been the most special time. And then, because of me coming, because it was up here in the yurt, we're in the yurt, and then my wife and family down there, I wasn't seeing them as much. Even though I was going down there and just bubbling with life, but I wasn't seeing them as much. So to be happy, serene, and peaceful, but then to neglect my family. So we had to come to an agreement on the amount of meetings I was going to, and I could IV AA if I could.
Yeah, I get it. I'm the same way. In fact, I go to an annual retreat, which starts at Friday evening and ends at noon on Sundays. That, to me, comes about as close as you can get to living inside of AA for 36 or 40 hours. I'm getting ready to go to the International Convention in Vancouver.
Oh.
And when I went to the one in Atlanta and the one in San Antonio, I just walked around just saying hi to everybody I saw. And it just amazed me how much just saying hi really means to people, and asking their name and that sort of thing. So the way you talk about your program sounds like you get a lot of enjoyment out of it, and certainly all of the blessings that God has available to us if we'll only open our eyes. And I honor your program, Joe. I'm so glad we had a chance to get together today to talk a little bit about it. And this podcast is being listened to all over the world, and I was trying to find the name of the woman who I interviewed from Canberra. And she had moved out to the bush much like you did. I'm going to send you the link to that particular interview, but hers was a very interesting. When you mentioned the bush earlier, she told me about what the bush is really like, and I think it's really marvelous that you have that to get back to when you want to get back to nature.
Yeah.
One final thing I wanted to just ask Joe, and that's this. Knowing what you know now with 26 years sober and all the gifts and things you've gone through, good and bad, and made you the man you are today, if you could go back to a younger version of yourself, Joe, in an earlier time in your life, and talk to that Joe, how old would that Joe be, and what would you say to him?
I think he'd be 9 years old, and he's on the railway, like it was a disused railway, and they just took the tracks off, and I'd play on there. There was lots of stones and rocks and bottles. I'd throw stones at the bottles, but I was in self, and I can remember like a horrible taste in my mouth. This is that right now, a horrible taste in my mouth. I'd go back to that, visit that kid, and just say it's all going to be okay. Because he used to walk along that railway as a way to escape what was going on in his home. He used to walk the streets. People used to look at him thinking he's a bloody little weirdo. Because he was walking the streets by himself, and he'd just do loops around the area, and he'd look at stuff, and he'd play in the park. This is all by himself. Because the fear of being rejected from people. So he'd go round to the friend's place. But I'd like to go back and say, just be yourself, and it's okay. It's all going to be okay.
This has been beautiful, Joe. I appreciate your willingness to do this interview and wish you well. I honor your sobriety. I love you, which is something I couldn't say to total strangers in the past.
Yeah.
You're not a total stranger anymore. And even before, as long as we're in AA together, we'll never be strangers, right?
That's it. I love you too, mate. And I mean it from the bottom of my heart. And I say to everyone, I give them a hug and love you. I love you because you understand. You understand where I've been and where I've gone through. And the fact that you shared back with me. And that's why, hopefully, people don't stay in the darkness from the walls they build, from their fear. They can knock down the walls and let the sunlight of the Spirit shine in. And that's the gift that we're given.
Yeah, that's right. Brilliant. Thank you, Joe.
Thanks, Howard.
Well, my friends, that's it for today's episode of AA Recovery Interviews. I want to thank my guest, Joe S., for sharing his story, and thank you for tuning in. If you've enjoyed the interviews in this podcast series, will you do a little service work by spreading the word about this rich and meaningful listening experience? This show is another helping hand of AA we can all extend to alcoholics everywhere. AA Recovery Interviews is available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube Music, and all other podcast providers. Or visit our website, AA Recovery Interviews, where you can listen to every episode of AA Recovery Interviews. Or visit our website, aarecoveryinterviews.com, where you can listen to every episode. And if you want to contact me directly with any comments or suggestions, simply email howard@aarecoveryinterviews.com. Please also take a minute to leave a rating and review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. By the way, this podcast strictly adheres to AA's 12 traditions and all General Service Office guidelines for safeguarding anonymity online. I pay all production costs, and no one receives financial gain from the show. AA Recovery Interviews and my guests do not speak for or represent AA at large. This podcast is simply my way of giving back to AA that which has been so freely given to me. The next episode of AA Recovery Interviews is on the way, so keep coming back. It'll be here soon.